Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here. Yuna and I came today to talk about the learnings from Zuzalu and living in the age of crypto tribalism. Yeah, very quickly on Zuzalu, it was an experiment in co-living and pop-up villages run by Vitalik last year in Montenegro. We'll talk a bit more about it as we get into things. But yeah, Una and I, just quick on us. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm currently a PhD at ETH Zurich, and together with Isla, we're in DAO and DAO Swiss, so quite into the DAO narrative, being blockchain sphere for more than 3-4 years now.
Yeah, and on my side, yeah, also DAO Swiss. We've been building DAO together. I'm a bit of a solar punk idealist. Very interested in the future of work, and both of us attended Zuzalu events last year, so we really wanted to come and share with the Swiss community what it was about, and yeah, what we see for the future of this movement and what's happening. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. So I will start with some global trends. So who here are digital nomads? 0 or half, 3, 4 hands, yeah. So anyways, what I'm saying here is that digital nomads are trending up. So from the population-wise and the interest on Google that you can see, and they are predicting a different economy together with blockchain, and we're enabling a different economy than before. And second, the trends in Web3. So we are in Web3, how many of you have feeling like we are gradually becoming an event industry? Like there are so many events to participate, including obviously the one we're doing here. And if you go to a Nomads Club, like the Crypto Nomads Club, you can see this not ending list. This just events for April, and it's not even ending actually. I couldn't do a screenshot that's long enough, and you can still see here. So we have a lot of physical events. So that means actually Web3 industry is gradually becoming more physical compared to 3-4 years ago that I started. And then there's more and more interest in real-world asset and the demography, actually. Me and Ella was joking that we're millennials who are OGs or more OGs in crypto sphere are aging physically. And who knows who knows this blog belongs to, who wrote this blog with the title, yeah. Yes, not long ago. So he said a very actually emotional and beautiful blog stating the end of his childhood, which he also thinks that Zuzalu is his next leap into the physical world and experimenting with the actual society. So with this trend, we see that the narratives of Web3 has gone from cyber world into physical world a lot. And we're thinking about how do we reform society? How do we do experiment for society and for a better society tomorrow? And there emerged the concept of network state, which is one of the most prominent experiments out there right now. And if you can take out your phone, and I would like to question you, like, what do you think about network state with this questionnaire? Do you got it now? Or 1 minute? All right, countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm gonna switch to the multimeters. Okay. Oh. Yeah, so results are coming in. So what do you associate network state with? Anarchy. Oh, oxymoron. Wow. Scary. All right, who said I hope the next 2 slides will explain you a bit more what is network state. Liberty. Interaction. Oh, more coming in. You can submit multiple words, so if you have multiple complicated emotions associated with network state, please put in. Our investment without legal. Wow. Ownership, experimental. Universal basic income. Yay. Wow, Bitcoin maxis. Yeah. I think
I like weird libertarian
that's pretty, I like freedom in the middle, so let's pause right there. And so we have quite a mixed feeling, right, about what really is network state, I would say. And here today I don't get into, because we're more going to talk about Zuzalu, our experience with Zuzalu, so we don't go into too much what network state is about. If you're interested in going to Balaji's book, Everything is for Free, he has one paragraph, one image definition of network state. Just a quick give you, for the ones who doesn't know maybe what network state is. The quick definition is a network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states. So I want to stress that this is an evolving concept. This I literally copy-paste from Balaji's book, and he defined network state, so it cannot be per se wrong from his own definition. But this is, I want to say this is an evolving concept. This is really more, I see it more like a movement than a fixed definition. And we want to say that blockchain technology plays a big part. It's an enabling technology, enabling economy, a different economy into the network states. And also many communities partially align with it. So for example, Zuzalu, it is though recognized as network states, but actually what the words that Vitalik always uses is pop-up city. So Isla will go into more concept later. And also just a bit clear the confusion also about network states and how we're doing also DAOs. Like, because DAOs are getting more and more physical. You probably heard the experiment of city DAO or cabin DAO. Yes or no? Like, these are all physical experiments. DAOs bought real estate and forming communities locally, which is getting really close to the definition of network states. And so in network states, literally, Balaji provided a checklist on the right, which are his list of definition. You kind of have to tick most of the boxes, so be recognized as network state. But then on the right, for the DAOs, you can see like, some DAOs could check most of the list, but not all. And some are just not essential for most of the DAOs at all. So they are confusions, but today we are going to focus on our experience in Zuzalu and how Vitalik and now the current experiment is. And I will hand it to Isla now.
Great. Thank you, Una. I've got a... Yeah, so first up, what is Zuzalu? It was an experiment started by Vitalik and a few people that he was hanging out with. There was no formal governments whatsoever. It was a very informal group of people that brought it together. Vitalik's idea around it was really to experiment in the space of creating a pop-up village that's longer than a hacker house and also has more people. He said, you know, hacker houses can be longer term but don't have many people, usually only 20, 30. Conferences have a lot of people. The Ethereum community comes together, but it's only a very short space of time. And he wanted to experiment in the space of living together in physical spaces, pop-up villages, for a longer period of time. So Zuzalu came together last year in March, April, I believe, in Montenegro. It was a mix of around 200 people in the Ethereum, longevity, governance, public goods, and network state community. Most people that were there lived together for 2 months, and every week had a different theme. And then it was followed up by 2 weeks of co-working in Istanbul later in the year. And now, let's talk a bit like what is a pop-up city actually. So in Vitalik's mind, it's something longer than a hacker house, shorter than a university or a city. He had this slide where he kind of talked about something very short term and coming together is like Tinder, so you come together for a date. Very long term are like real cities and countries, and he wanted to experiment in the middle between shorter than universities, longer than conferences or hacker houses. One of the latest experiments that followed Zuzalu was Vitalia, so a specifically longevity-focused city that came together in Roatan. Roatan is a free private city in Honduras. So that's actually a permanent community focused on sort of like freedom and maybe some of these more libertarian ideas that some of you were alluding to. And they had a 3-month village there called Vitalia, focused specifically on longevity and how to actually bring about longevity improvements faster. So that was kind of the idea space that we were playing in with like community, governance, urbanism, logistics. That's what this event was really about. The highlights, like the obvious stuff that the media kind of picked up on was 200 weirdos living with Vitalik full time. Grimes turned up for house parties and DJ'd. There were like a bunch of celebrities that nobody actually realized were there, but just were like kind of low-key there, and nobody knew who they were. And just very easy access to people like David Hoffman, Vitalik, obviously, Scott Moore. But actually, the real highlights were the personal experiences. And I can say from my experience, I was actually only there for about 3 weeks. It was really like, on a personal level, it created a new sense of identity. I had never had that sense of belonging the same way that I did with that group of people for that amount of time. My parents had always said to me when I was young, like, oh, when you go to university, you'll meet your tribe, you'll meet your people. And I was honestly quite disappointed when I went to university that nobody seemed to be quite as nerdy. And this was suddenly a group of people who came together and really wanted to discuss on an intellectual level, but also were very open to like the human connection. And it wasn't like at a conference, this transactional thing of like, what do you do? What can you do for me? How can we exchange value? There was much more of an interest in other humans because there was the safe knowledge that everyone you speak to is going to have some interesting thing or interesting nerdiness that they want to talk about. And it was just incredible. It's very hard to describe, but it was definitely a realization that we can have better villages and cities where we live together and where people can have a different or better sense of belonging than maybe they do in traditional cities. Learnings, this is a personal opinion, so other people might have different learnings. But I know that Una and I agreed on 2 weeks being too short for Zuzalu culture to truly unfold. So when we did it in Istanbul, we were only 2 weeks. And we noticed that it was amazing people, so very similar people, but it was a lot harder to get the sense of community and being able to, because it was only 2 weeks, there was a sense that like you had to make the most out of it, so people were more transactional, and they were trying to make amazing connections in a short amount of time. So I think definitely the magic of the Zuzalu experience was being together in a physical space for a longer period of time, and I would say that starts maybe at about the 3-week mark. Centralization was an interesting learning, so it was common knowledge to everyone that basically like Vitalik and a few people were behind it, but they possibly weren't transparent enough in the sense that a few months after the main event kind of happened, nobody was clear on who's actually running this and governing this and how. And there started to be like discussions within the community of like, we know like Vitalik is running it, so just like say that. And I think that that was a big learning for the group that was mainly organizing in terms of just like getting from that centralized beginning, which was actually totally okay, but just being transparent about it, to a state where the community is governing more. And that's where we're getting now. Vitalik took the step of decentralizing the events for 2024, but also we have like Zuzagora, which is a forum where you can do anonymous posts, and the discussion is happening mainly there. So it's a lot easier now to kind of truly have that sense of a decentralized community governing this kind of vision and idea. Another big learning was like, the media assumes anything it isn't invited to write about is elitist. All of the articles pretty much that were written about Zuzalu were quite negative, and they were like, yeah, crypto bros coming together, and like, yeah, it was not good media, and that was a conscious choice, I think, on the organizers, that they just didn't want to invite media. They wanted this to be a safe space for people to just do their thing and not have it like a big event that everyone's like hyping about. So just because you're not invited as the media doesn't mean an event is elitist. And there's a big but to that. Definitely, the way they did diversity and inclusion was actually a lot better than I think people expected. They just put a lot of money into scholarships, and a lot of people were there that would not otherwise have financially been able to be there. So it wasn't just like a bunch of rich bros. And it wasn't 50% women, but I would say at least 30%. It was very diverse. But it can definitely be done better. And that's a big topic, personally, that I think is really exciting to work on, and a lot of people in that community are working on. Also, if you're interested, I recommend the article Why I Built Zuzalu, which I've put a link to there. It's an article personally from Vitalik where he talks about his background for the event. What we're doing now, Vitalik put this post up in the community forum that he wants to make 2024 the year of spin-offs. So instead of just doing one big headline event for Zuzalu again, he recognized that was kind of the central group of people that had all the power, and that they didn't want actually there to be kind of a picking of favorites and like an informal but ultimately centralized group of people deciding who can do events and which events are Zuzalu events. And instead he said, let's decentralize this, let's open the frontier and make 2024 explicitly about opening and having an experimentation of new events by new organizers. So none of the events happening in 2024 will have the name Zuzalu, but all of them will have at least one team member organizing that was at Zuzalu, and that was for continuity of culture. So Zuzalu was a very special experience, I would say, and I think it's definitely not necessary to define it in terms of you have to be a Zuzalu person to be able to organize it, but I think his meaning there was really, if you haven't been there, it's hard to kind of get the sense of what was important and what wasn't. So he set up this funding round to decentralize the events coming up in 2024. He put 300 ETH every quarter up from like his private funds. The first round happened in Q1. Most of the money is going towards events, so people organizing events like Zuzalu, or with a Zuzalu kind of a approach, e.g. longer than 3 weeks. And he also put up 80 ETH for the technology round. So Zuzalu is kind of becoming this vision towards how do we live together in the physical space. Ethereum is this great community. We come together for conferences a lot, but how do we come together more often and actually spend time together, longer periods of time? How can we make this physical space more permanent and maybe more conducive to us grown-ups who might have children and might need a slightly more permanent kind of place to live with people than just like digital nomading around the world? And so in order for these pop-up villages to keep happening, you also need the technology. And that's where the technology round is important. So it's quite hard, for example, financing. So there's like a crowdfunding tool that's coming about where people can help sort of pre-crowdfund the events they want to see. And then Q2 is going to be a similar kind of approach, but with the integration of learnings from Q1. Cool. Very, very quickly now, we're going to tell you about what Una and I and a bunch of other people in Switzerland have been working on. We're trying to do a Zuzalu-related event in Switzerland with a bit of a focus on the power of decentralization and the Swiss culture, and how we can bring the leadership skills that are required to kind of bring about this new era of decentralization. So we're calling it ZooLead at the moment. The idea is to have 3 weeks in Switzerland this year. The ethos that we're working around is accelerating and shaping Web3 leadership, promoting public awareness around Web3's collective power for good. But really, it's kind of about cross-pollinating ideas, both between like the traditional space of decentralization. So for example, Impact Hub is doing decentralization for years, and they have maybe some successes and learnings from that process that the Web3 community has not yet actually integrated. And at the same time, the Web3 community has a lot of learning. So how can we bring more traditional leaders together with Web3 leaders and really talk about these learnings and really create a sense of like, this is actually how to do leadership in Web3. And there's never going to be like one definition, but like I think we can get to the point now of like a mini MBA for how to do leadership and co-create that together. And that's the idea. A short residency, 1 to 200 people, local participation. We want to have 25 curators, so 25 people from various leadership spaces who help us define both who should participate and who should actually define the content and who can bring valuable content. So we'll say that as well later, but if anyone thinks that they could be one of those people, feel free to reach out to us. And diversity, equity, and inclusion, very important to me personally and to us as a group. We think that that's one of the key important aspects that were actually a great success in Zuzalu and made the event so rich. And we want to bring that also to ZooLead. And I will hand over to Una to talk a bit more about the event and the concrete stuff.
We're running a bit short out of time. So instead of talking too much about basically what we're trying to say in this slide is we really want to bring local community of Switzerland, the Swiss, why we're doing it in Switzerland, not other places. So the democracy practices cross-pollination from real world, because we do believe in certain Swiss democratic practices, and it can bring special learnings to Web3 leaders. And these are some of our visions. We don't want to go into too much detail, but one thing that we want to say at the end to highlight one of our location partner that who Ralph is right here. We're going to partner with Next Gen Village. We're at the Interlaken Mystery Park. I don't know if anyone has been to Interlaken Mystery Park. It's a really fun place where there's literally a spaceship and pyramids. So there we want to really create a new vision for next generation of society, do living laboratories over there. And we have great capacity over there and still under brainstorming and how we can bring about this lively community of Zuzalu there and bring Web3 community there to let's do the first kind of social experiment, living lab experiment in Switzerland. And this is basically our vision, and welcome you to co-create or support us in any way, since we're running out of time. So a quick overview of like how crazy the space is really amazing. I imagine already great party over there. And like if you're interested, please let's take the conversation after this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have time for maybe one or two questions, if anyone right here in the back. We'll get the microphone over to you so we can all hear you.
Hey, thank you for the presentation. Zoo Berlin is coming up and it's scheduled for 2 weeks. And you have mentioned that you think it's at least 3 weeks to get the full experience. I still plan on going to give it a shot. Yeah, what's your thought on this, that it's just scheduled for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, that's my personal learning. I would definitely try and do a zoo-related event longer, but it was also very short notice for some of these zoo-related events, so not everybody is going to have the full capacity to do a 3-week or more event this year. I think that's totally fine. Definitely go to Zoo Berlin. I think it's going to be an amazing event anyway. Yeah, but I think for the full experience, it does really help to have a longer period of time.
Thank you for the question. Does anyone else have any questions? Right here.
You got the mic still.
I mean, hello, thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, this is a genuine question, like, aren't you afraid like that these experiences can kind of become a cult over time and sort of religious kind of things where it becomes more isolating than useful? Because I really like the concept, but at the same time, you know, maybe I've seen too many movies about this kind of like communities in isolation that then end up drifting away from the ideal. So I was just curious about your take on the subject.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I am scared of that, actually. I think that's healthy to be scared of it. I watch a lot of documentaries on Netflix about cults, and I have to say the similarities between cults and DAOs and network states are very scary, and it's a very fine line. I think that's totally something that we need to be conscious of, and I think that can be one of the reasons that it's good to learn from from history and from what we've already learned in history about governance and how to prevent cults. But yeah, being scared of something, I'm not sure if it's the reason not to do it. It's just in an educated way.
I think, yeah, like in my, I did a presentation, for example, about network state. So the problem is that when you have a prominent leader, you have soft power, right? I think for forming of a cult, that's something probably most scary, because we actually have all the infrastructure, the governance, and also software. Actually, technically, we have voting powers given to people. So technically, actually, we have pluralism in. for example, network state. That's what we're aiming for. But like, I think this is already a leap from original, per se, whatever tribalism or like people gathering together, because you will have a transparent on-chain record of people voting and what people want. So this consensus is different, but still, like the worry for me is that there's still soft power for leaders. So, you know, there's still, we still have, for example, Vitalik as a prominent leader for Zuzalu, and he still have immense soft power. But this is something more psychological. It's really hard to solve. It depends really very much on the community vision. And in Zuzalu, I have to say, I feel very safe, and I feel like this is not gonna happen. And this is, you know, this is very much, because it's soft power, you cannot quantify it. And also in network state, they always stress also a prominent leader, right? So that would happen in any community that would have some sort of leader title, but you always have to feel it. Maybe in the future we will have a, I don't know, more better assessment framework for this, but at the moment, I feel like Zuzalu is very safe and it's not going there.
Great. Thank you. Give it up one more time for Isla and Uma.